You guys, welcome back to Rev University. Glad that you're here and more excited that we have some very special guests with us today. After going through tough financial times, Jordan Page got out of debt in record time. Now a popular blogger, YouTuber, and public speaker, she teaches others to do the same. Jordan proves you can live a millionaire lifestyle because of conservative budgets. Her principles have changed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people who turn to her for money management, organization, and productivity advice. Jordan has appeared on Rachel Ray, The Today Show, Inside Edition, TLC, US News, and more. In 2019, Bubba Page sold his startup and joined Jordan full-time at the Page Company. Since then, they have launched 3 new businesses together, and Jordan and Bubba are parents to 8 kids. They run a total of 6 successful businesses and help hundreds of thousands of families pay off millions in debt every year. So give a warm welcome to Jordan and Bubba Page.
Testing.
Welcome, welcome.
I don't know who sent that bio, but I owe them a favor. That was really nice.
Truthfully, I think you wrote it. I pulled it off of your website.
Oh.
So it makes sense.
I have people, Bree. I have people.
One error, 2020 is when I sold, but that's
Oh.
okay. Don't worry.
Okay.
Our website's probably wrong.
You know,
See,
I'll
our
just
people need to get
we'll
on
s-
it. Yeah,
we'll say it's me. We'll say it's me. You guys, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. Kick it off with your story. I personally love your story. I think it is very raw, very human, very authentic. So talk to us about life in 2010 and what that was like for you guys.
Oh boy.
Oh boy, I don't know if I remember.
Let's see here.
Did you hear the part where we have 8 kids? Like
Yeah.
the amount of brain cells I have left?
Woo!
Minimal. Very tired.
But we had one
So
child at
can
that
I
point.
remember back to 2010. Okay, the reality is Bubba was the entrepreneur. He was the one that, went to BYU and really had this fire under him to go start his own thing, and he did. And I just really was just raising kids, but started this. I don't know. I'm a creator probably before I'm an entrepreneur. The entrepreneur thing kind of happened on accident. So if there are any accidental entrepreneurs in the room, holla, because he was an intentional one. I was an accidental one, and it's kind of been this beautiful fusion of the two. So we have 2 very different perspectives. But yeah, I just wanted to help people, and I was really excited about the message, and I didn't see it as a product at the time, but product that I was creating that I feel like could really help people as the methods that we had developed were helping us. So in 2010, it really was just, do you guys remember the Blogspot days? Did anyone have a family Blogspot?
We might be too old for this crowd.
I don't know. I know. Am I aging myself? Anyway, I had this Blogspot free blog where I'd talk about my daughter's birth story and what I ate for dinner, and then also talk about getting out of debt. It was very awkward. So we made the family blog private so I could talk about whatever I wanted, and then I just created this little free blog that I called Fun, Cheap, or Free because I couldn't think of anything else, and just started sharing my ideas there. All the while, he was hustling, grinding.
She was supporting me. So I was doing it, my own startup, and bootstrapped, had no income whatsoever for the first year while she was still working for just a bit before we had our first son. And that was a huge sacrifice because she kept working, supporting me, and literally I took no money out of the business that entire first year. And then when she had our first child, that's when the promise that we had made was, look, if I can't support the family by the time we have our first kid, then I just quit what I was doing and go get a job. I knew that I could, go get a job wherever and support.
Lots of burgers to be flipped.
That's right.
That
That's
kind
right.
of thing.
And I was luckily able to pull just enough money, sporadically throughout that next year when we had our kid, for us to barely survive. But it was barely surviving, and it was not a monthly income. I mean, it was once every 3
Pay your
months.
tithing, folks.
Yeah.
That's
true.
Miracles happen that year.
And so that support is what gave me the ability to build the business called Launch Leads that ended up selling in 2020. And there's a lot more to that story, but that's when she really got started with blogging.
Yeah, so he was doing Launch in the grind. I just had this little hobby blog on the side. And it was 2010, 2011. By 2013, I could feel that I was building this community. I could just feel it. Comments, I don't know. I had an online group of friends that I had never met, but we had this whole thing going. And one day Bubba's like, do you know how many people are reading your blog? I'm like, I don't know. It's just a screen. So he plugged in this thing called Google Analytics. And I was like, what's an analytic? And he was like, holy crap, Jay, you've got like hundreds of thousands of people reading this blog every month. We got to make some money off of this thing. And that was actually a battle, really. It was a bit of turmoil where I was like torn between wanting to just do what I love and create and just help people. And he saw it as an opportunity and really taught me the value of entrepreneurship, which is there's no shame in making money doing what you love. And in fact, by doing so and creating and building a successful business, it allows you to help more people. It allows you to grow and do more. And that has been the case. I was worried it would turn into a job.
Which it has.
And it has.
It fully has turned into a job.
But truthfully, it has grown to help people a lot more. So that's kind of just how it started on accident. We put some ads on the blog. And then over time, I wanted to write a book. I wanted to teach classes. I wanted to do a conference. I wanted to do all these things. And we've accomplished much of those. And Bubba was my biggest supporter. And then last year, literally, I was pregnant with twins. He sold his business on a Friday. Ink was still wet. I went into labor like 24 hours later. COVID shut down the world like 48 hours later. We were like, praise. It was like the best timing we've ever received.
If the wire wouldn't have hit my bank account that Friday, the deal would have never gone through. Like literally within one 24-hour time frame, the deal would have never happened.
Yeah.
Because the buyer was the CEO that I had hired. So I ran it for 6 years. I hired a CEO to run it in my stead because I decided to start a software company. So I went and raised venture capital. So from a lot of the local guys, you guys know Kickstart Seed Fund, Peterson Ventures, and then I got accepted to Techstars in Boulder, Colorado. And you guys are in the accelerator incubator space, so you guys have probably heard of them. They're probably right behind Y Combinator. And so I ended up taking this software company to Boulder for 4 months, leaving Jordan with 3 children and pregnant with our 4th.
It was fine. He didn't abandon me.
I mean, it was pretty much abandonment.
I cried and dragging me by the ankles on his way out.
But so I moved to Boulder. I lived there for 4 months, and I would come back like every other weekend. And it was one of the hardest parts of our marriage ever, and I promise I'll never do that again. So I took this startup through Techstars, raised more capital from Techstars itself, and then another one called Tall Wave Capital. Ran it for 2 years, blood, sweat, and tears, dealt with all the fundraising and craziness of that world. And this company was started as Outro, and I've got an original helper here,
What?
Michael Romrell.
What?
We went to Google Startup Weekend. I don't know if they do that anymore. Do they do that anymore? They still do it? Have you guys heard of Google Startup Weekend? Anyway.
I feel like we're on a grand tangent.
I'm so sorry, but this is
okay.
important.
Keep going.
This is
This
the
is great.
crowd.
Keep going.
This is great.
the
Tell us
audience.
We're
more.
gonna ride it. Okay, we're gonna ride this.
So Google Startup Weekend was a competition that you get together for literally, 48 hours. And you randomly get put together with a group of people at this event. And, so they have people pitch their idea. I pitched it, and they were like, yes, you're one of the 10 companies that's going to go throughout this weekend. Grab 5 or 6 or 7 people with, in the group and work on it for 48 hours. And at the end of 48 hours, you're going to pitch in the end, and one of the 10 companies is going to win this competition. And Michael was here, and he helped us for that 48 hours. It was like no sleep, call everyone we knew, build a MVP, and we ended up winning. And it was like, oh my gosh, there might be something here. And so that was actually the catalyst that took me away from my full-time, bootstrapped, profitable company.
Which he never thought. Like, we couldn't even go out to dinner on a Friday night really for a weekend without feeling like the whole company was going to fall apart. And so it was a really big stretch for him to, I don't know, like.
Yeah, well, I hired 2, potential CEOs that didn't work out. And then by the 3rd shot, I was able to find somebody right before I left for Boulder, Colorado. It was nuts. And I literally left him with like 2 weeks of training, and he ran the business.
He's like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
Call me if you need me back. Oh, I can't hear you. Breaking up. Bye. Gotta catch my flight.
It was absolutely crazy. But anyways, I know maybe a tangent, but for this audience, I think you guys get it because you're in the incubator
what
space.
happened? So you have lunch. hired someone
So
for launch.
Launch continued to be a salary producing company, so it was cash flowing for our family. So it took care of our family while I was gone. And then fundraised, venture-backed software company, ran it for 2 years, blood, sweat, and tears, and it failed. It did not work. So talk about failure and feeling like I was a failure. I went through like 3 to 6 months of depression. I didn't even know what depression really was until, I'm at home taking this time off because we couldn't continue with the business. Our investors were like, look, let's just try to sell off the assets if we can. And I felt like a complete failure personally. And it wasn't for those 3 to 6 months until I had some great friends and mentors come and say, look, your business failed, but you are not a failure. And I probably had to hear that 100 times. But it took a while for me to realize that me as an individual person did not necessarily fail, but that business did not work like we had thought. Now, all of the investors were incredible, and they said, look, Bubba, the next company you start, we will fund you again. We loved you. We loved the people you worked with. We will totally fund you again. And that should have been enough confidence to say, okay, I'm not a failure. But it took me that 6-month time frame to still believe. And anyway, some of you have probably dealt with that failure before. And if you haven't yet, it might be coming in your future.
Oh, stop. You're going to be great.
It's going to be great.
You're going to be fine.
But failure is part of life.
They've got RevRoad.
They've got RevRoad, that's right. But failure is a part of life that you learn more, in my opinion. You learn more from your failures than you do your successes. Launch ended up continuing to grow. My CEO kept running it, and I cash flowed until we sold. And so I was able to continue to support our family throughout that time frame from that cash flow business. But anyway, that's just a little bit about me.
Meanwhile, I was just playing on the internet. I was just having a good old time, having a bunch of babies. And then my digital products grew, and then we came out with physical products, and I was just drowning. Dying was basically me and just a part-time assistant. And so when Bubba had more space, when he shut down his company, kind of took a year off and reassessed, he came on as an advisory role just to kind of give me some advice. And then I think it was 2019 though, that we started working together, that he was like, let me come on and help you, bring on a team and do some back end stuff. And we've been doing that ever since.
So talk to us about the growth. When you recognized, okay, this could be more than a hobby and we're going to start turning it into an actual business, what were some of the first products? What were the first steps that you took to get to the Page Company where we are now?
Well,
Budget boot camp.
Well, I think one of the most helpful things that Bubba did in this conversation is when he said, look, there's no shame in turning this into a business. You're not selling your soul. And he said, what are the things that if you could get paid to do anything, in this realm, what would you want to do? What is your dream? And I was like, I really want to, hold a conference where I can see people in person. Online is tough. I love doing TV. I've done a lot of local stuff, but I was like, I'd really love to, and I had done some national stuff by then, but I was like, I'd love to do TV professionally, have a show, or something that could help people ongoing and not just a 12-minute or 7-minute segment. And we made this list. And I think, generally speaking, that was the most helpful first step because it put my dreams on paper and made me realize, I can build a company around my dreams. And we have done that. We've accomplished everything on there except for the TV show. But, who knows, maybe coming. Someday.
We'll coming.
See. I don't know. Now I have a lot of kids. I'm like, that's a lot of babysitters to manage. But anyway, so we focused first on the lowest hanging fruit, which are the products, digital products, because we had so many digital eyeballs, so many people, so much traffic coming in every day. And then we used the revenue and the profit from those to invest in some physical products. And so now we have a line of planners. We have a line of budgeting planners and programs, and we have productivity things. We have a meal plan subscription for frugal meal planning. We've got a cookbook coming out. We've got meal planning products. So anyway, we have a whole variety of things now. But we started digital.
And in 2020, you helped thousands of families get out of, $102 million of debt?
Yeah, that was insane.
Yeah. Round of applause for that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, true story. So 2020 just sucked. you know?
Yes.
And we were sitting there, and I was just feeling like everyone was kind of wallowing in this chaos. And I thought, my people call themselves Freebs, so they're my Freebs. And I was like, Freebs Nation is pretty legit. We can rise above this. So we put out a goal to pay off $1 million of debt, where it's like, everyone, go look at your bank accounts, go look at your credit cards. What can you do right now? Like, literally go sell that old rusty bike that's sitting in your garage, go do something, and go put it towards some debt and come track it. We paid off $1 million of debt in like the first 12 minutes. So then I was like, looks like we need a new goal, because that was supposed to swing us
Now, to
through
clarify,
the end of the year.
she has a couple million followers on YouTube or on Instagram and on Facebook. So there was a lot of individuals.
But still, I don't know.
She wanted to do 1 million, and within obviously those first 15 minutes, we're like, oh, let's change the goal to 100 million.
Yeah.
And
we
then over the year, we totally nailed that goal.
Yeah, it was great.
I love it. You two clearly have great chemistry as partners, and obviously in life and in business. Talk to us about how you've made it work. What works for you in a working relationship to keep things flowing, moving forward, and as a good balance?
Who else in the audience has worked with their spouse before? By raise of hands.
Or family in general, or a
family.
best friend, or someone that you're very close with.
It is one of the
How's it going,
hardest
Bubba?
things you can ever do. But there's also huge blessings that come with it. But you have to know that it's going to be one of the hardest things that you've ever done. And, I came from a background of being the CEO. I was the CEO of my business. I grew from the ground up. Jordan was the CEO of her business. She grew from the ground up. So the first few months were probably more rough than they needed to be, until I realized that Jordan's really the boss. And that was good. And that was excellent. And but even since then, it still is not just peaches and cream all the time. It's still hard. We both are opinionated. We both feel like we both obviously are passionate about what we're doing and helping so many people, that we want to do it right. And that's hard. That's really hard.
I have some advice, but it is not my own. It was bestowed upon us. So we have someone that we hired on kind of as a consulting role at our company, helping us play Tetris and fill some gaps where we need some good team players. And anyway, one of the things she did was she kind of sat us down on a phone call, and she's like, how's it going working together? And we're like, I don't know. I mean, it's like hard, but it's fine. And she's like, so you guys realize like you have all the same strengths and all the same weaknesses, right? And she's like, we really need to work on this. And it was really interesting hearing someone's perspective that the advice I give is like, look at your strengths and then find people to fill in where you can't. Like, one of the things that we're really good at is we can think big. We can dream, we can shoot for the stars, but executing on that is a challenge. We need a lot of doers on our team. We don't necessarily need someone to come in with these big dreams and this big vision, because we've got our vision on lock. And so one of the things she's really been helping us do is find some really like A players, big hires, executors, and instantly and immediately we've been feeling like any tension or stress that we do have, where we get frustrated if a project's moving too slow, or if we don't see eye to eye on something, we're like, oh yeah, it's because no one's doing it. And we're just sitting around expecting it to just be done. Anyway, so the advice I would give is if you, whether it's a business partner, whether it's a spouse, a family member, or just an employee that you've worked with for a long time and there's a dynamic there, focus on your strengths and fill your weaknesses with someone else that is a strength for them, rather than having this magical expectation that they're going to match that. It's setting them up to fail.
And I think one thing that we've done pretty good at working together is setting our goals of where we want it to go. I think we've been on the same page for the most part of where we want to take it. I know in other startups, though, partnerships, maybe they begin with the same idea in mind, but maybe over that first year or two, your goals shift. And that can cause really big pain within the company. Maybe one person wants to take it public, and the other person wants to sell as soon as they can, right? And so frequently talking about it, whether you're working with a spouse or not, this is just any partnership situation, is to have very clear expectations and goals and to make sure they're aligned, because that can cause such friction that can really damage the company.
Last thing that I think has helped us a lot is because Bubba's been through the grind, like 80, 100 and plus hour work weeks, moving away from home. Like he's really been in every aspect of building a business. And we look at each other and we say, never again. We are building a business to match our lifestyle, not the other way around. And we focus on that first. So it's like we have set the goal that if we need to burn a project and literally call it a sunk cost because it's hindering our relationship, or if our employees are feeling too stressed out, or if it's pulling us away from this lifestyle that we've worked so hard to build, burn it. It's fine. And I think by keeping that priority, it's helped us really be scrappy and make very quick decisions without investing too much time or money in something that isn't really going to pan out. So I don't know.
I think hard talk, especially with this group right here, because I think the majority of you are planning on raising funds. I think the majority of you, maybe not. The reality is we've been in the bootstrap scenario from my company from 2009. We've bootstrapped everything Jordan's done. And I fundraised for my tech startup. If I could choose again what to do with these businesses, I would probably suggest that in my lifetime, I may never raise funds again from venture capitalists. Not to say that they weren't great partners or that they were mean. They were phenomenal partners. They were very good to us and, again, stated that they would fund us again. But the stress that comes with other people's money is really intense. It also will change some of the decisions that you end up making. Because if they're thinking you're supposed to hit a certain revenue goal by X date and you don't think it's going to happen, you might change some of the choices that you and your co-founder were originally thinking of doing to be able to hit that venture capitalist goal, even though you know it's not best for the business. So I'm not trying to put down venture capitalists because they really do.
You had to raise money for your tech company.
There are certain companies you absolutely just have to raise capital for, and you just need to be aware that you'll deal with the consequences. And there are good consequences and there are bad consequences, but just to understand, if you can bootstrap, if you can cash flow a business, do that for as long as you possibly can. Because you'll be in the advantage, you'll be in the seat where if you ever do raise capital at some point, you'll be in such a better position to keep more ownership of your business, to be in the decision seat. And there's a handful of companies like Qualtrics, like Entrada, that have done that, where they raised very little upfront and maybe didn't raise, again, for years and years in advance. So it's possible you can do it. But anyway, I'm happy to go, and that's a whole other tangent.
Would you expand on what are the consequences, good and bad, that you see with using venture capitalists?
Good, you get into this network of phenomenal people.
I know. Are we going to get in trouble for saying don't raise money here at RevRoad?
No, you're not. You're not.
Are you okay? Do I need to hook him? We're fine.
You have the CEO approval. It's okay. Continue.
Okay. So the network of the venture capital world is phenomenal, right? Like going through Techstars was unbelievable. I mean, being here in RevRoad, you guys are already seeing this is like a Techstars environment, right? Where you get this immediate network and there's value in that network that's incredibly valuable. So I'd say that's huge plus of raising capital. Number two is you have capital now. You can go hire that key software developer because you've got capital. You can do that. When you're bootstrapping, you're trying to find somebody that'll work for free.
Like Uncle John that like codes in his spare time.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Right. So there's consequences with that. Right. You're going to try and find the guy who's still in school that doesn't have any experience, and maybe they totally botch your project. Right. Or you go outsourced and you struggle. I've dealt with that too. So those are some cons. I'd say just that pressure and stress is a big con. The ability to grow extremely fast with venture capital is better than you can do with bootstrapped. So the one thing I'd suggest too for those who do raise capital is pretend like it is your money and don't play business. When I say don't play business, like playing house, you don't need business cards. You don't even need a great website most of the time. You don't need to have T-shirts and hats to start a business. I know. I love free swag too. But like, you don't need to play business until you actually have a business. And when you have a business, that doesn't mean that you have code. It means that you have real life users. And I would suggest that you have paying customers.
Bubba literally sold, like when he started Launch Leads, he basically pre-sold his product to a few contacts, and kind of on the spot, he was like, hey, I'm providing these services now. Are you interested? He's like, yeah, can you do this and this? And he's like, yes, that is part of the package. Yes. And he kind of like created it on the spot, got a few paying customers.
And then I went
literally
and built it.
was like, okay, I'll get that to you.
What Kickstarter has done today for like the product industry, I did that for a service company. I went and sold these services before I ever had a website, before I even had a username or an email address. And when I had a check from a customer, I then started the business. So that's very different than most companies, how they begin today. And I think it's a detriment, because if you start without that revenue coming from a customer, you don't know what the customer actually wants. And you may build something that they don't want. And in 2 years, like my business, anyway, the whole nother story about my business.
And we do that too with mine, where we pre-sale almost everything, just to gauge interest, to allow for opportunity for feedback and pivot, because you think you know what your audience wants or your customer wants, but you're looking at it like this, and sometimes allowing some opportunity for greater perspective. So almost everything we do, in fact, I'm going to launch a new program in 2022. I don't even know what it's going to be yet. I'm just probably going to, make a general framework and then pre-sell it, do some pre-orders, ask people what they want to see in it, and then build it with what they want to see in it, so it's exactly what they want. And luckily with digital products, you can do that. Physical might be a little harder, but anyway.
Having an audience helps with that. Not everybody has an
That's
audience
true.
where she can
That's
poll
true.
her audience and say, what do you want?
But you went to like a few contacts and
for
basically
sure
said.
So, but it is an idea, just as a tip, as a new entrepreneur, every person you meet, add them on LinkedIn in a business setting, or follow them on some social platform. The reason for this is that in 10 years from now, you're going to have a massive network of people that you can approach. And maybe they're going to be your next investor. Maybe they'll be your next employee. Maybe they'll be your partner. And I'm so grateful that I started doing this early in my career, but I was at every networking event I could go to. I wasn't a coder or developer. I was more on the sales and marketing side. And my co-founder would have been developing while I was out networking. But that networking has been and paid off so much. I mean, that's the only thing you take with you after you sell a company is your network, right? Yes, I got cash and that was helpful, but like the network is really the long-term investment that you can start now. So don't be afraid to go shake the person's hand that you walk by or that you meet, and then add them on a platform. And even though you may not talk to them for 2 more years, you can reach out to them in 2 more years because you were connected at some point. And that will ease the cold outreach to any investor or mentor or employee or whatever. So anyway, that's just a huge tip.
Don't add me. I don't do the LinkedIn. But Bubba's on there.
But you can follow her on social media.
Yeah. I don't even know.
Jordan on Instagram, Bubba on LinkedIn.
Yeah, there you go.
Perfect
Find
balance.
me on the gram. Yeah.
Perfect balance. Okay, I'm just having so much fun up here, and we're running out of time. So let's open it up for audience questions. I'm assuming we'll have a few. If you do have a question, please raise your hand. We will run a microphone to you so our friends online can hear as well.
Okay. My question is, how did your audience react when you brought Bubba into the company? What was that like?
I don't even think they really even understand like what Bubba does from a business perspective, meaning he's always kind of been part of the picture.
Sorry, I'm gramming.
Oh, well, this is like the worst angle ever.
Whatever, you're
Come
beautiful.
on.
Isn't she smoking?
Woo! I'll do that. I think my brand has always kind of been, let's figure this out together. I've never really claimed to know all the answers. I've always kind of, like one thing, okay, let me start over. I went online looking for help with budgeting because I've got ADHD. I hate budgeting. I still do. I think it's the worst. I don't love, like I'm not one of those that geeks out over it. But I'm a grown-up, Sometimes we got to do things we don't like. So I went online looking for someone that spoke Jordan and spoke my language, and I couldn't find it, so I created it. And one of my greatest goals, and still one of our company creeds and mantras, is to take the way that everybody's doing it and do it totally different, because it's already being done the way that everybody else is doing it. And one of the things that I started doing early on is sharing like real life examples and like sharing my real budgets. And like I just did a YouTube video where I literally show the spreadsheet of how much we're paying for our kids' Christmas gifts and how many we're buying. And like that's super vulnerable, and it doesn't work for everything, but for my brand and my business, it really has been what sets me apart, because I'm not the best at any of it. So my family and our real life, real time way of doing things has always been a part of it. So Bubba's always kind of been there. We would do live Q&As together and get his perspective on things. And so I don't think they really know any different. He's always kind of been there. I will say, though, a challenge with that is now we're at the point where we're building to hopefully sell off what we can someday. And it's tricky when you build a brand around a person or an expert. Like, can Rachel Ray ever sell the Rachel Ray show? I don't know, you know? Can Bree Ray ever sell your music career? Like, you can't, you know? So that's tricky. So now we're working on pivoting to the point where we're bringing on other voices, and we're really finding a way to scale that. But he's always been a part of it, and he always will be. We're going the Magnolia model, if you will. Like, there's always Chip and Joanna, but it's not called the Chip and Joanna company. It's called Magnolia, and that's kind of what we're aiming.
What's interesting, too, is the Page Company, yes, our last name is Page, and so that was convenient. But the Page Company website is a Shopify site that sells paper products for the most part. So from an acquisition standpoint, the paper product company, planners, and we're selling tens of thousands of these planners, this can be a totally acquired asset. Let's say Franklin Covey, the planner company comes by and they say they really want to know how to get into the woman market, right? Well, the Page Company has that market. We own it, right? And so the Page Company itself is a sellable asset. Jordan on YouTube might be harder to sell because it's all her face, or her Instagram account will never sell. But Maury June is a baby product company. And
we actually did get an offer for the YouTube channel, though. I will.
We did, so that is possibly sellable.
You can buy anything in this world with money. Come to find out. Too soon? Too much?
No, that was perfect. That was perfect.
Mormon humor for it.
That's right. When our kids ask us how much we make, I always say, you know what, we make sufficient for our needs.
Oh gosh, here we are.
So
we're gonna bear our testimonies next.
That's right. Okay. Anyway, so there's possibilities of selling these different assets while still holding some of the influencer side of it, but influencing does help on kind of pre-selling. So anyway, another question.
This question is for Bubba. It sounds like you didn't have like a big background in developing or coding, things like that. As like someone who wants to start, a massive growing business like yours before the Page Company, what advice do you have as someone who didn't have that background?
Find a co-founder. So the networking, like we talked about, hugely important. Because in order to find a partner that you can work with and thrive with, you probably should have a relationship with them. And therefore, you should probably have met them before you start that business together. And so I ended up starting, so like Michael, for example, he was a technical guy that was helping us on the startup. And he could have been a phenomenal technical co-founder at the time. And it was my first time doing a tech company. I didn't know anything about tech. So I needed to find somebody like a Michael to help me grow my business and help build that in there. I ended up going with an outsourced company, and that was to my detriment. It wasn't the right way to go. It was a mistake I made. And so I'd say finding someone that you know that has the skill set that is not your same skill set, that is how you begin the journey in the tech world, at least. Got to have a co-founder. And investors will always ask if you have a technical co-founder.
Oh, hey, Bubba, kind of building on that. So when you're bootstrapping a company and you are bringing on people to your team, what kind of incentive can you give them? Because one is like having them catch the vision, right? And if they love the vision, you want to bring them on board, like that's the most powerful thing for sure. But what about like equity standpoint? Like from a founder bringing on another co-founder, what have you kind of seen? Maybe even percentages, things like that.
Yeah, sure. So my first company, Bootstrap, that sold. The CEO that I hired, I ended up giving him 12% equity in the business. Now, I had already run it for 6 years. So it was an already existing company. It was already doing a couple million in revenue, and it was something that was it was on its way. And but I wanted to give him ownership. Now it vested over 4 years, and so he didn't just get it all up front so he could take off. But I needed him to have ownership because I was literally out. I was gone, and he ran the day-to-day. But I didn't give. No, I'm wrong. I gave my very first person who helped me begin the company. He got 3% in the business. Now I paid him. I didn't pay him a great salary by any means. And so it was essentially a lever. You have equity or you have salary. And if you're bootstrapped, you basically tell the person, I can pay you market rates with no equity, or I can pay you half or whatever for some equity. Or if you want to go for nothing, I'll give you more equity. And some people are in a position where they can work for free because maybe they've had a success in the past. But from a bootstrap standpoint, that's your lever. It's salary versus equity, and you just and that works in a venture-backed company too versus bootstrap. It's all the same. Now, from a bootstrap perspective, you have to think, if you're giving anyone equity, if you don't have a plan to sell that business at any point, it's not worth anything unless you've agreed to profit share. And that's another way you can do it with a services-based company, possibly, where you're cash flowing. Instead of we're negative in revenue, negative, and then all of a sudden we get a profit and we sell. That's how a lot of tech companies do it. Service companies should be profitable right out the gate. And so you have cash flow, and you can do a profit share. Profit share doesn't necessarily mean you give equity. If you sell, you would still own it. But profit share is every month or quarter, you give them a percentage of profits. And that can have a wide range. That can be less than 1%. It can be 10%. Or higher, depending on the partner. So those give you some ideas of how it can be structured.
Hey, Bubba. So I appreciate the LinkedIn advice. I just looked 2017 when I was pitching Ruby with Eric Stopper. I had 40 connections on LinkedIn, and I messaged you saying thanks for the advice. And I took it, and I have almost 3,000 now. So just by slowly adding.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Nailed it.
Appreciate it.
Will you send me a message on LinkedIn?
Only if you respond this time. No,
let's not get crazy here.
So
he won't even respond to my texts. I'm kidding.
So so there's a few people that send messages, but I will look for yours.
Thank you. Yeah. I now have a VA that helps me with it. So
nice. Good job.
So I saw Slow Ventures, by the way. They did buy a YouTuber for like 1.7 million for 5% the other week. So,
It's a thing.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
That Russian lady's trailblazing. So my question, Bubba, have you, with all these different businesses, have you ever thought about putting them underneath a fund, right? Like I have a consulting company, a fund company where we manage, actually own the businesses, and also a software company that is still sitting in my drawer somewhere. Just curious if you've had experiences with thinking about consolidating things, keeping them separate, trying to buy out any of these people that you gave equity to. I mean, I'm just curious if you have any advice in that, the logistics of having multiple businesses that are growing.
Absolutely. So I'll clarify. So the first company, Bootstrapped, launched Leads, was sold, and all of that equity has been totally distributed. Everybody got paid out who had equity. So that deal is done and transaction is complete. Outro gave out equity according to stock options and partners and all that, and that company has been dissolved. It's terminated. So all of that is totally complete. Deal is done. Our companies we own together. So we essentially are our own fund, and so we fund and bootstrap all of our companies because we're profitable, and we have capital, and we don't need to get bank loans. We don't have to take venture capital because we have our own funds. So we've started investing in other startups now as angel investors. And that honestly is like one of my favorite things ever in the world to do. I just love it. But we essentially run our own fund, if you want to call it, but we just don't take anybody else's cash. It's just our own. So you would call it a family fund. And that's how we build all of our companies, is through our own family fund.
Me? Okay. I guess my question is, what do you wish you would have known when you were like in college age, just in regards to internships, work, major choices? What's something you wish you would do differently, or what you just wanted to know?
Your turn.
That's definitely a Bubba question.
I would have just started sooner. I think as an entrepreneur, you have a certain window. I'm not saying that you can't be an entrepreneur at different stages of your life, but there's this magical window when you're a student in college that you typically don't have a mortgage. You typically may or may not be married, or if you are, you're able to live off of top ramen and it's okay. You may or may not have children, and so you don't have, your life is just beginning. And as a student, there's this window where if you just go guns blazing and build your network like crazy, leverage mentors like crazy, because you really don't know what you're doing. So you shouldn't do it on your own. You should be meeting with people all the time. So I'd say just get out there and do it. I'd say get mentors ASAP and build a relationship with them, because they may be your investor down the road, or maybe they help you miss landmines to where you would have totally blown up your business. So maybe those are two things to get started. And I would suggest don't raise capital right away.
And I will say, like, from my perspective, I wish I would have thought sooner. I wish I would have, understood the value of small business sooner, and that there's a lot of beauty and power in running like a really good small business. Like, we made the Inc. 500 last year, you know? Like, we're killing it, you know? So, and we just, actually, funny story, we got a business award. I literally can't remember what it is. The Utah.
Oh, that we didn't even go.
We were gone.
Number 17 on the Mountain West
well,
Capital Network,
you just gave
top
away the
100.
punchline, Bubba.
Oh, I'm horrible
This was
at
the point,
jokes.
is that we couldn't go to this thing. It was the top Utah top 100, whatever. And I'm like, well, we're probably going to get like 99. Couldn't go. Couldn't find anyone to go for us. We were out of town. Our team's remote. So we didn't show up, and we got 17, and we weren't even there on stage to get the award. It's so
They were
awkward.
like top 20, and
We're like, ooh. Anyway, so like, I think we underestimate ourselves. All I'm saying is there's a lot of power in building a really great lifestyle business. And even though it's Q4, we're working a lot right now, but we put lifestyle first and our employees and our audience and our customer very first. And it works. You can build a very lucrative, very successful business without playing the corporate game that so many people do. And like, he plays the corporate card and played that really, really well. I'm like anti, and it's worked out fine. So just do you, boo, you know? You just find what works.
Yeah, that's for sure. Last comment on that, just to know. So venture backed, you're looking at that. That's what gets on the top of magazines most of the time, right? That's what the sexy side of entrepreneurship is. People believe that raising venture capital is the way to go. And just to confirm what Jordan's saying, the majority of businesses in America are not venture backed, and they can have the absolute best lifestyle, making $1 million, $2 million in cash to their family a year plus. And they built a phenomenal business without bringing on outside capital. So it is
hundreds of employees, and
Yeah. Just a thought.
Right here. Just a quick question. Outside of cash flow and building your network, how have you gotten creative trying to find assets in a startup when you first started building your companies?
So if I can clarify, the question is maybe how did we come up with the ideas to start a business?
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, like how do you come up with ideas starting your business and finding more assets and just outside of your regular cash flow and resources? Yeah.
How to fund it then?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think, so funding, there's a lot of government resources. I think a lot of people totally don't look into the government resources. Grants. It was crazy, but there are grants out there for just about anything. And so I think we don't take enough time to look into certain things like that. Their mentorship through the government may not be as high quality as somebody like a RevRoad. So maybe be cautious of some of the advice you get from government employees. And a place like RevRoad is probably going to be a more successful place. You typically start with the triple Ds and the triple Fs. Has anybody heard of these? I know, this is going to sound horrible.
It's the worst.
I'm so sorry. But usually when people first raise money, they raise it from friends, family, and fools, or doctors, dentists, and dummies. Now, I know that's going to offend people, so I'm just sorry in advance. But typically when you first raise capital and you're a first-time entrepreneur, that's where it's going to come. and you'll probably screw up, and you'll probably raise it way too high of a valuation. And if you actually build a successful company, the next person who brings in money will cut that valuation in half or more, because they're more sophisticated investors. You typically are not going to raise from a sophisticated venture capitalist your first go round. Sometimes it happens, but it's less likely. And so you go through the 3 Ds and the 3 Fs if you choose to raise venture capital or just raise capital. But please use mentors. Please use advisors as you go do that, because your dentist buddy who has cash and wants to give you money has no clue what a startup is and what it's going to take. And every week when he's texting you, where's my money, and you're not going to give it back for 10 years, he's going to be pretty PO'd. So clear communication, clear mentorship, clear advising is really helpful. But unfortunately, that's the acronym that gets you started.
One of the ways that we've funded, like what we do at the Page Company, is we take what we're doing already and we find every possible way to monetize it. So a lot of times you spend all this time on this one particular area of genius or this one product or whatever, but it's like, couldn't you repackage it 5 different ways? Couldn't you add a tiered scale? Couldn't you dissect it and turn it into mini versions of the same product? Like, that's one of the things that we've done really well, just because I'm like super busy and I can only do so much. So I'll create one product and we will dice, slice, and splice it 5 different ways, meaning, so maybe I make a digital program, a course or something, and then what we can do is break it down into like mini courses, or we use it to create content on a beautiful lead gen tool such as YouTube. I am not a YouTuber, I'm not an influencer, but I do use social media for lead generation, and it's unbelievable. And then I'm also getting ad revenue. You know, we make 20 grand a month just from passive ads on YouTube that funds the stuff that really needs cash. Like an order of planners is hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know? So we really find all these passive ways from products we've already built to create passive income to fund the next thing. So we're never dipping into our bank account. We're just taking gravy off the top. So that's kind of one of the things.
I don't think you can say you're not a YouTuber with 920,000 subscribers.
I'm not a YouTuber, okay?
Yeah. But anyway, so cash flow. If you can build a product, or even if it's a services company, cash flow that services company and use that profit to build your product. If you can do that before raising any type of money from the triple D and triple Fs, better for you.
Yeah, we've got time for one more question.
Awesome. 3 years ago, you guys came and spoke at UVU. Loved it. It was wonderful because my wife and I are kind of similar. I have always been wanting to be an entrepreneur, kind of stuck in the 9 to 5 right now, but it's always going to be aspiring. And now we started a real estate company together, real estate property management and ownership. So thank you for inspiring me in that route. The question then goes to, how do you kind of not step on each other's toes in marriage and being a partnership? And what have you guys found has been a really useful strategies in helping you separate the business partnership from the relationship side of it, and then also other components of your marriage? How do you guys keep all those things going and have the kids and do all of that harmoniously?
Get a really good marriage therapist. It helps a lot. It's worth every dollar.
This is probably the hardest part of entrepreneurship if you're working together as a couple. It really is hard. And it's not something that we're not going to just say, oh, yeah, it's easy. You guys can all do it. You can. But it's like anything. Marriage is going to take work. Business takes work. I think it is tough. But divide and conquer is something that Jordan preaches. She preaches that with budgeting. She preaches it with responsibilities in the home. And I'd say the same thing in a business with your spouse, is if you can have very clear expectations on paper, written down, exactly what one person is supposed to be doing and what the other person is supposed to be doing, you will step on less toes. You will still step on toes. It's inevitable. But you will step on less toes and maybe have less frustration if there's very, very clear communication on who's doing what, when, and how.
One of the things that we did early on, which seems twisted, is we treat our marriage almost more like a business, where when you grow a business, you don't have 2 CEOs typically. You don't have 2 CMOs typically. You don't have 2 people who are really good doing the exact same project in the exact same role, they would kill each other. There's a reason why we have a president and a vice president of the United States and not two presidents, right? So don't treat your marriage or business the same way. Like he has his skills and talents and interests, I have mine. So we literally, this divide and conquer he's talking about is I literally got out a piece of paper and I was like, okay, from the moment we wake up to the moment we wake up. So who's making breakfast?
Or make out.
Or make out, or makeup. Yeah, you wish make out. It's more like makeup. No, I'm kidding. So like this has helped us a lot. It's really stopped a lot of fights in our marriage where we had to decide who's lead parent, who's the lead breadwinner, meaning if we're both on a video call and a baby cries, who gets up? If we are both at dinner and there's a work emergency, who gets up? If there are dishes sitting on the counter, who puts them away? Who takes the garbages out when they're full? Like, I'm not kidding you. We were on a drive to Vegas for an event. We literally went through like everything and just divided up. And now we have these expectations. And then just like at work, you meet at your conference table, you project manage, you're in charge of this, here are the deadlines, here's this, ready, break. And then if it doesn't get done, then that kind of speaks for itself and you don't have to nag the other person. It's just like, here's your roles, here's my roles. We literally even trade off anniversaries and Valentine's. Like he was in charge of Valentine's this year.
Huge tip
so
for married
I'll
couples.
be in charge of our anniversary in April. And then we don't have this unmatched expectation of like, oh, what are they going to do for me and what am I going to do for them? And we just were like, can we be past that whole expectation thing and just write it out?
But just like a business, we'll plan out the year. Maybe you've seen this on one of our YouTube videos where literally we'll sit down now in December and we'll plan 2022. And you put the big boulders on the calendar first, kids' baptism,
vacations, time off,
whatever.
Yeah,
and then you start filling in the pebbles, and then you start the stones and the pebbles, and then you filter in the sand. And of course, you don't have every day planned of the year, but you have a lot of the big core elements planned, and so you have a structure. We know when we're going on vacation, so when we get asked to come and speak at something like this, I can say I can't do it for 6 months, and now we're here. We
also set boundaries. Like with that is you can't talk about business every minute of every day or you lose your husband or your wife. So we will literally have boundaries where it's like we'll block out time where we're like, you know what, we're clocked out. We are now just Bubba and Jordan right now. We're not business partners right now. And we'll be on a date and be like, no talking about work. So then we just talk about kids the whole time, right? Am I right?
But future.
Yeah.
Talk about what can be.
But yeah, you got to set a lot of boundaries too.
Yeah.
We did say one last question, but we have 2 more. Excuse me. You already have microphones.
We'll be fast. We're so long.
So
we'll be fast.
Right here and then right here.
So you guys said earlier that you were the dreamers, the idea guys, pretty much.
Visionaries.
You needed your doers. So how important is it to keep the controlling asset or the controlling share as just the dreamers when you need to take care of the doers too?
Well, usually you can take care of your own equity. If you started the business and you've created the initial, asset or value, you can usually keep hold of almost all of your equity. In this case, where we've bootstrapped our own companies together, we own 100% of them. None of our employees have any equity whatsoever. And we even given them the incentive to come work for us. Before working from home was cool, we did a remote team. And that was a really big thing of having moms who wanted to be able to work from home. We have a phenomenal team of people who can do that. And their time is super flexible. And before working from home was more normal, that was a huge incentive for people to come work with us. And we are willing to pay, what we think the market's rates are and whatnot. But I don't think giving away equity it just depends on the type of business. If you have to have a technical co-founder and we're the visionary and we're going to go build a software company, then I'm going to have to give equity to that technical co-founder. I remember bringing on my co-founder to the tech startup that went through Techstars ended up becoming called Outro. So Outro.com, I brought in a co-founder a year after I started it. So I had blood, sweat, and tears for a year using this outsourced firm, and I decided to bring him on. He had already built and sold a business already. Super successful, well-groomed, entrepreneur. I gave him 25% of the business, just like that, because I valued him so much. Even though he hadn't even been there for a year, I gave him 25% of the business because I wanted someone that was fully in. Now, he brought some cash to the table too as part of his deal, but he owned 25% of the business, and it vested over time. Those ranges they're gonna be all over the place. It could be less than 1%. It could be half. It can be whatever. But
when you're bringing on doers, in my situation, the mistakes I've made is I don't think you can expect someone to be an A+ doer until you've kind of done it yourself and know really what needs to be done and how. Otherwise, you can really lose quality control pretty quickly. It can slip away from you. We're at the point now where we're obviously, I'm not going to do my own books. You know, I'm not a tax accountant, but for so long I was literally keeping track of all my own dollars that I now can recognize if the bank account like kind of looks low, and lo and behold, we weren't getting our ad spend dropped in correctly, or you know what I mean? Like, I feel like for quality control reasons, it's really fun and nice to just bring on everyone really quick to do the things that you don't want to do or can't do well. But that's just level of caution is you got to kind of grind a little bit too. And the example someone told us, it's like kind of like with a newborn, you kind of have to like learn what makes your newborn, this is a mom thing, but like you got to learn what makes them tick and what they like and don't like and how they fall asleep best and stuff before you can hand them off to a babysitter, so then you can go do other things, you know. Otherwise, they're just raising your baby for you, and they determine all of those nuances. So
I confirm that, especially with salespeople. Learn how to sell first and then hire salespeople. Last question.
Yes, this is for Jordan. So you've been on the internet for so long and have experiences. So what kind of advice would you give to those small businesses that are trying to use social media?
Great question. Social media is tricky, but it's also such an underutilized resource. I do think so. Social media, I have found, is this gift. It's like fishing with an incredible net, like the best net in the world, and you're fishing out of like a bathtub. Like it is so easy to catch people. It's just at your fingertips. You just have to figure out how to be noticed when there are millions of accounts on YouTube, and the algorithm, or not even just YouTube, Instagram, or even LinkedIn, Pinterest, whatever it is, and the algorithms are changing all the time. So as a business, it is harder for sure. We have businesses that they don't get nearly the engagement as more of our behind-the-scenes personal accounts get, but I believe that that doesn't matter. It is still an invaluable resource that no one should discount. I don't care if you're a law firm or if you sell snow cones, like y'all should be on social media. And my best advice is go find someone in your niche that's killing it on social media and find what they're doing. Like, what are they doing? And learn from them. Don't figure it out on your own. There are people who have already figured it out. And I don't know, maybe you can speak to this too. How the heck? You do social media.
No,
so
you're the queen. I mean, you are the queen of social media. But I agree with you. I think finding an example of someone who's in your niche, who's killing it and copying what they're doing, using their tactics and their strategies is 100% the easiest first step.
They actually call it the Beyonce principle because Beyonce's top most viral, most award-winning videos, like the black leotard, if you like it, then you should have, and all these, like, who runs, I don't know. Guys, you don't know what I'm talking about, but everyone else in here knows. Anyway, those were literally copied step for step by videos that she found on YouTube. And she gives them credit if you dig far enough, but she essentially saw this art, this work that was being done, that she was like, that is really amazing. This is something that really is speaking to people. And she took it and put her own costume on and put her Beyonce spin on it, but literally took the choreography and put it to her own music. And I believe that that's what social media is. You never want to copy, of course, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel necessarily. Look around, see what's working, follow some accounts that are good at not only teaching you how to use Instagram or YouTube or whatever the platform is, but companies that are doing a good job.
And just a word of caution with the influencer side of things, if there's anybody in the audience who really wants to become an influencer, there's a book called Build for Fame or Build for Wealth. And that's the idea behind like selling an asset. And so you just have to be aware that if you're becoming an influencer and your business is your name or your business is your face, that is going to be a lot harder to sell that asset down the road. So building for wealth would be maybe not so much of your face and name on things. But
Or you build an audience and then you create something that your audience then has already bought in on because they know and trust you.
But the influencer space is extremely helpful as entrepreneurs. It's so much easier to start a company when you have hundreds of thousands of people following you to say, hey, I've got a new product, you can buy it now. And
or even 300 people following you. Like, when are you ever going to be in a room with
exactly.
300 people that are like actively choosing to listen to what you have to say? Like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful place to end as we build our businesses and play it to our own music. And we go in our own step. Jordan and Bubba, thank you so much for joining us. We have a present for
stop
you.
It. This is
Merry
the best
Christmas.
day ever. Thank you.
One more round of applause and special thank you to Jordan and Bubba.